Hi guys, it's Karen. Welcome back to Karen Bowes. I'm so glad that you guys are with me today. So today we're going to be starting out our planning videos with something that's a very important first decision to make, which is where are you going to go? So you've decided to take a Disney vacation. You've decided to do that kind of quintessential Disney trip that every family takes. So right now you're deciding where do you want to take them? What kind of Disney trip do you want to take them on? And this may not be something that a lot of people think about. A lot of people automatically go, okay, they're getting to that age, it's time to take them to Disney World. Let's go, we'll plan it, and then that's it. And that's all the thought that they take into where this trip is going to be. But what's important to remember is that the Disney company actually has a lot of different choices and options when it comes to planning that trip. And so it's important to weigh all of your options out to decide what makes the most sense for your family. So the main sections of Disney travel are the local, and by local I mean in the United States, parks. So that would be Disney World and Disneyland. You've got the international parks, which is Disneyland Paris, Disneyland Tokyo, Disneyland Hong Kong, and Shanghai. You also have the Disney Cruise Line. You have Aulani and the other Disney resort hotels. And then you also have Adventures by Disney. So right now, you're probably like, oh my God, that's so many options. How do I choose? I didn't even know I had choices. I was just going to take my kids to Disney World. And now you're saying there's all these choices. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is that we kind of take a few things off the table right away to make it a little bit more easy. So the first thing we're going to get rid of is the international parks. They're amazing. They're incredible. And if you're a big Disney fanatic, or if you live in Europe, or you have a chance to go to Europe, or you have a chance to go to Asia, you should definitely go. But that being said, for the average American tourist, they're not going to be your first choice. And by first choice, I mean your first trip choice, not your top choice, because Tokyo is absolutely, positively my first choice for a trip. So now that we've eliminated those international parks, the other thing we're going to also get rid of is Adventures by Disney. Adventures by Disney is tours that take place in Europe. They even do them in America, South America, Asia, all over the world. And they're led by Disney cast members, and you get to see incredible parts of the world. And it's kind of an opportunity to see the non-Disney side of the world, you know, whatever, all of that, but within the comforts of knowing that you're being taken care of by Disney. I haven't had the opportunity to do one of these, so it's not something I know a ton about, and it's also probably not what you're thinking of when you think of a Disney vacation. So it doesn't make a ton of sense for your kid's first Disney trip to be a Disney-led tour in Norway. So we're going to take that off the table. And then there's one more group that I talked about that we're going to take off, which is Aulani and the other resorts that Disney owns, which is Hilton Head and Vero Beach. Now these are hotels that Disney owns, and there's a light amount of character and Disney within these resorts to varying degrees. And they're in beautiful places. They're in Florida and Hawaii and South Carolina. But again, they're not very practical, and they're probably not what you're thinking about when you think of a Disney vacation. And so we're going to really focus our conversation on 3 locations, which is Disney World, Disneyland, and the Disney Cruise Line. So we're going to start with Disney World. It is what you probably are thinking about right now. It is the quintessential Disney trip that, you know, everybody takes their kids on once, and it's wonderful. I love Disney World. I've done all 3 of these vacations as an adult, so I do have an experience with all of them. Disneyland is wonderful. It's got 4 parks. It's got the water parks. It's got Disney Springs. It's got all of the hotels. And it is a full vacation on its own. You can easily spend a week there. A lot of people spend more time there. You know, I hear stuff online all the time about people who go for a month because there's just so much to do. The issues with going to Disney World are going to be cost. It's likely to be the most expensive. There's some Disney Cruise Line trips you can take that are going to be more, but those are going to be very long trips as well. It's also going to be kind of overwhelming for very small kids and for parents with very small kids. It's a lot of land. It's a lot of stuff to do. And it's very easy to get exhausted and to get tired from these trips and need a break. So there's a lot of really wonderful things about a Disney World trip, but it may not be the right trip for you. If you are planning on only taking one Disney trip ever, that's your goal, you're going to do this and that's it, then you're probably going to do Disney World. If you have kids that are, 4 years or older, you've got a larger family, you're doing a big family reunion trip, it's great for that, and any of these trips, I've done all of these trips with my husband and with my mom. And so they, all of these locations are great if you're a young adult looking to go on a trip with a significant other or with a group of friends or, whatever kind of group you're looking at taking. But a lot of times people who are planning these trips are families. And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about, comparing, how old your kids are and what kind of travel you plan to do to Disney. Now, Disneyland, which is the original park that Walt built himself, is in California. So, and just as a side note, I am going to assume for all these conversations that you kind of live in the middle of the country. So I live in Wisconsin, so flights to Florida and flights to California are about the same cost-wise. It's about the same distance when it comes to traveling, and so that kind of becomes a moot point for me. Now, obviously, if you live in Louisiana or if you live in Oregon or California, that's going to greatly affect your decision. If you live in, if you live on the West Coast, you've probably already taken your kids to Disneyland, and maybe you're looking to now upgrade and take them to Disney World. Maybe the same reverse if you live on the East Coast. So whenever I talk about, this is the better trip or that's the better trip, it is under the assumption that you can't get to either of these parks within a day drive. And so these are, big trips that you're planning with your family. So I just wanted to add that as a note. Now, for Disneyland, it is a smaller resort. There are only 2 parks. There's no water park. And there are 3 hotels, along with a smaller version of Downtown Disney. Now, most of the time, you're going to be staying outside of those Disney resorts. If you can afford it, that's wonderful. However, the rack rates for the Disneyland Hotel, the Grand Californian, and Paradise Pier are $300 to $500 a night. And so for a lot of people, that's not affordable. And so most people do stay off of Disney property at Disneyland. So one of the things that you do lose when you do a Disneyland trip compared to a Disney World trip is that you're not in a quote-unquote Disney bubble. And even within the parks, it's not quite the same feeling. Disneyland was the first version for Walt, and so he had a limited amount of land and a limited amount of space to build on. And so with the success of Disneyland, this major metropolis popped up around the park. And that means that you don't have to step more than a foot off of Disney property to see a Walgreens and a pizza restaurant and a Holiday Inn and all of that kind of stuff. And for some people, that does majorly impact their choice and where they want to stay. So that is something that's important to note, because going from version 1 to version 2, Walt bought an incredibly large amount of area to build Disney World. And it meant that Disney World is really this Disney bubble. And when we say the Disney bubble, that refers to the fact that you can get off of the plane at Orlando Airport, walk down, get on Disney Express, which is complimentary, get bused from the airport to your hotel, spend the entire time at Disney, never leaving property for any reason, getting back on a bus and going back to the airport, and seeing absolutely nothing your entire trip that isn't taken care of by Disney. You don't see McDonald's, you don't see a mall, you don't see, that kind of real world stuff. And so that's referred to as the Disney bubble, this idea that you really are kind of not under Disney's control. It's not a bad thing. Most people say the Disney bubble with a great amount of affection. But it's under Disney's design. So it's what Disney wants you to experience. And it is a wonderful thing. I'm not bashing the Disney bubble. I love the Disney bubble when we're there on trips. It's one of the best part of those trips is the fact that you really are just totally consumed with Disney. And the real world doesn't matter. You get to ignore, the stuff that goes on at work and the stuff that goes on in life. And you get to just have this really wonderful experience. So that is unfortunately something that does happen when you go to Disneyland because of the circumstances beyond Disney's control. There really isn't a bubble, even within the Disney resort itself. So, one of the great things, though, about Disneyland is that, so its greatest weakness is also its greatest strength. It's smaller. It's easier to manage. It's easier to handle with small children and a larger group of people because there's not as much space to get lost in and there's not as much to get exhausted with. So, it's a really great trip if you want to kind of get a Disney taste. You don't want to do a full Disney trip. You want to do Disney for a few days. You want to go to Universal Hollywood. You want to go to the beach. You want to experience California as a whole. But also, if you're just looking for a smaller trip to kind of get your kids used to what a Disney park is going to be like. It's a really great first Disney trip if you're planning on doing other Disney trips. And that's something that's really important to consider when you're planning that first trip is, okay, is this a one-time thing? Or is this something, we think we'll take them to Disneyland, and when they're older, we'll take them to Disney World, and then we'll do other trips, and we may come back to the Disney experience at another point. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider when they're planning a Disney trip. You kind of just get into this mode and you plan your trip. You kind of look at it in isolation. And then you go and you have this wonderful time and you go, oh, maybe I do want to come back. This was really wonderful. We had such a great time. The kids loved it. The fireworks and the parades and the rides and everything. And you go, oh, but, we already did the big trip. And so it's something to certainly consider. So, and like I mentioned as well, it's a really great way if you want to experience things outside of California. And so this is a bonus not just for families, but also for couples who are going to Disneyland on their own, or families with older kids and that sort of thing, is if you're looking for Disney to not be your whole trip, but just a portion of your trip, a Disneyland trip can be a great way to do that because you can do other things. You can even go to Disneyland and then take a flight over and then go to Las Vegas for the rest of the trip. And so you can really have a very different experience because it's a smaller park and because there's not as much to do and see. You can see other things in the state and nearby. So it does tend to be a bit less expensive than a Disney World trip. Now, but when I say that, I do mean when comparing a full week at Disney World compared to a full Disneyland trip, which is probably going to be about 3 to 4 days. I was very surprised back when I was planning a trip with my mom to celebrate graduating college. We were planning to go to Disneyland for a few days, and that was going to be our trip. And I was looking at things and trying to figure out what she was going to like, and I kept thinking about how, for her, Epcot was more appropriate. We really like travel, we really like seeing the world and doing food things, and so World Showcase was very appealing to us. And when I crunched the numbers and I compared a trip of a similar length between Disney World and Disneyland, for us, Disney World was actually cheaper, and so that's what we did. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, and that may vary from time to time depending on whose tickets are more expensive and when you're comparing hotel prices. Because Disney controls a lot of the hotel prices at Disney World. They obviously control all of their hotel prices. And so you can potentially get a cheaper rate in California because you can take advantage of things like Travelocity and other travel websites to get a lower hotel price. So that kind of thing isn't necessarily always the case, but for us, in our experience when we were planning our trip, Disney World was actually cheaper. But when comparing a short trip at Disneyland to a longer trip at Disney World, obviously Disneyland is cheaper. And it allows you the opportunity to go out and do other things in the area. So the last one to really consider when you're starting to plan this trip is a Disney cruise. So Disney cruises are completely run by Disney, and you get back into that Disney bubble idea, at least when you're on the ship. They are pretty much all-inclusive, which can be a very nice bonus for people who have, who don't want to be pulling out their wallet at every meal, who just want to know that everything's covered. And they can be comparable to a 3-day cruise is comparable to 3 days at Disneyland. So in this way, you're going to be paying about the same amount of money to spend the same amount of time at either of these choices. Disney cruises are great for people who kind of fit into Disneyland realm but don't want to go to a theme park. They want their kids' first theme park experience to be Disney World, but maybe they're too young, or there's other things that are holding you back from planning that big Disney World trip. The Disney Cruise Line can be a really great alternative to that. And the reason is that there's a great amount to do, and Disney has done an amazing job of offering things for every age range. So you can't take babies on board unless they are 6 months or older. And so that is an important note. But after that point, you can take any child onto a Disney cruise. They have nurseries, and then after that, they have sections of the ship that are for different age ranges. So they've got a kids area, they've got a tween area, they've got a teen area, and then they've got an adult area. And obviously adults don't go hang out in the kids area, and kids can't go into the adult areas. And then they have areas of the ship that are free for anybody to use. They're family areas is how they refer to them. And this is really great for a number of reasons. First of all, if you want to have a trip where you spend all of your time together, you totally can. There's plenty of things to do that are in the family areas that everybody can enjoy. But if you are looking to have some time with your spouse, if you're looking to have some alone time just yourself, if you're looking to help your child be more sociable and get used to meeting new kids, Disney Cruise Lines are great for that, because you can take your kids to the children's area, and there are supervised activities and they're supervised by amazing Disney cast members. And so they're in this safe environment with kids their own age. And so you can form lifelong friendships on these ships. And so it's a really wonderful opportunity if maybe your child's a little bit more shy, or you want them to have more, social opportunities. Maybe they're an only child. A Disney cruise is a really great way to do that. And, your kids can go having that time. You can go off, go to the pool, have an adult beverage, relax, just do nothing, whatever you want. And then you can come back together and have that family time. Now you can, at Disney World, have a babysitter come if you want to go out and have a date night. There are things like that are options, but it's not as seamless and it's not included in your price for a Disney World trip compared to a Disney cruise experience. So it's also really wonderful if you want to have your kids see the world. Disney Cruise Line is in the Bahama area, the Bahamas and Caribbean. They do Canadian cruises. They have just brought back their Hawaiian cruises, so they go from Canada all the way down to Hawaii. They do European cruises right now, and there's talk with the additional cruise ships coming out that they may start to do Asian cruises. So right now, though, it's Northern and Central America and Europe that Disney travels to. But it's an amazing way for your kids to see something like Europe with the convenience that you can get off, go see Rome, go see Paris, go see all of those wonderful cities, and then get back on the boat. And so you're not traveling from hotel to hotel. You have the convenience that your room is your room, and it's always waiting for you, and you get to go out and see these amazing places. You can also take a cruise, go down to the Bahamas, and just enjoy beaches and sand and swimming, which is really another wonderful thing for kids. It's obviously great for older kids because there's more for them to do, and they can make friends within their own age group, and they can do it in an environment that's safe. You feel totally secure with that. And so Disney cruises can be this really great experience to either dip your toes into the Disney World experience, and when I say Disney World, in that case, I don't mean Disney World Resort, I mean the Disney World, just to be clear. But to get that experience, or on the reverse end, to have older kids who may not want over-the-top Disney and may not want to go on all the rides and have that experience again. But, maybe you have an attachment to Disney. Maybe you think it sounds really wonderful. It's a great way to do that. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other really great thing, and something to know, is that because Disney Cruise Line goes to so many different places, it may actually be more convenient for you to take a Disney cruise than a Disney World trip or a Disneyland trip. So they go out of Vancouver, they go out of Port Canaveral, which is just outside of Orlando. They will sometimes have cruises that go out of California and New York, and sometimes even out of Texas. So it's important to go onto the Disney World or the Disney Cruise Line website and check to see where those cruises are departing from, because you may actually find something more convenient for you than Disney World or Disneyland. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then there's just the simple fact with the Disney Cruise Line that it isn't necessarily always over-the-top Disney. And so for some people, that is an important thing to know. You can have a really great Disney experience, and there's characters, and there's the shows, and all of that kind of stuff. But if you're looking to kind of have a step back from Disney, maybe your spouse isn't as into Disney as you are, or you've got a kid who's not as into Disney, the cruise line's a great way to do that, to do a Disney trip that makes everybody happy, because there is plenty for them to do that isn't, super Mickey Mouse all the time. Now, the one thing that I think a lot of parents forget sometimes is what really makes sense for their kids. And so sometimes parents get into this mindset of planning this because they've dreamed of taking their kid to Disney World. And I'm not saying there is anything wrong with it. But it's important to remember what your child likes to do, what they are passionate about, what they get excited about. And so tailoring this to match that. So many times we hear stories about people who plan these incredible trips. They spent all this money to take their kids down to Disney World, and all their kids wanted to do was swim in the pool. And it's kind of soul-crushing for parents to be in that experience and to be in that situation, because you wanted them to be in awe of Cinderella and the castle and the rides and everything, and they don't care about any of it, and they just want to go swim. So if you've got a kid like that, then maybe a cruise trip is the better choice, because it means that they can have that experience of swimming and enjoying the pool and everything, and they can spend a good amount of their trip doing that, but then they can also go and have those little experiences with the characters, and maybe when you take them to Disney World after that, then they're going to remember that from the cruise and what a great time they had, and that's going to transfer over to your next trip. So that's something to keep in mind. It's always important to tailor your trip to who's going. And that's really what this video is about. It's about really thinking fully about what your family really wants and what makes sense for you. Because no one Disney trip works for everybody. And I enjoy all of them, and some people enjoy all of them, and some people don't like the cruise line and they never go on cruises, and they love the parks and they spend all their time in the parks. And then there's people who go on a million cruises but barely ever go on a Disney World trip because they enjoy what the cruise offers. So just taking that time to really sit down and talk to your family and go over these choices is really, I think, an important thing. And it's also a fun thing to talk to your kids. What do they like? What do they want to do? Because then they're going to be more invested in the trip as well, because they were part of the planning. So that's just something to keep in mind when you start to make your plans and everything. And that's what I'm really hoping this channel is going to be. So the point of this is that you may not have thought about this. You may have come into this video like, what's this? I'm just going to watch this because I'm bored, whatever. I know I'm going to Disney World, but I'm curious what this girl has to say. And you may be coming out of this going, wow, I never thought about that. My kids would love a Disney cruise. That makes so much more sense now. And then you get to go and have that experience, and you still can go to Disney World. You can still go to Disneyland. You could do a cruise and then Disneyland. You can do Disney World and then a cruise. You can do a wide range of things with this. And so it's all about just doing what makes sense for you. So that is it for today. I wish you all a magical day, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks. Bye.